All right. A little bit late. That's okay. Appreciate you guys and the patience. We made it. We're back again on Wednesday, like we usually are with the AMA. Run it down over here in the chat on YouTube, X, Facebook, and over here on TikTok also. Back from Ondo. So if you've been living under a rock and you didn't know that the Ondo Summit was this week, I was there and got to listen to a lot of institutional players, chat with them about different stuff that we're working on. Which is a really good time. Ondo did a fantastic job of curating that event, having high-level people there, putting it together in a very professional way. If you haven't watched it, I would encourage you to do so. It gives you a really good heartbeat or pulse on where the industry is. Everybody's very optimistic, even though the prices are down. Who was I listening to the other day? You had Danelle Dixon from Stellar, who was also there at Ondo. She was not there, but Stellar was there. Talking about, kind of the dichotomy of the price action that we're seeing right now. You would think that with all of the movement toward regulation and all the things expanding in the space, you would also have price appreciation. Yet we are in the bear market. It's very apparent at this point that we are almost like blockchain backer thinks we're very deep in the bear market. I would love for that to be the case, and that we bottom out here soon. I do think we're going to go lower. I do think Bitcoin's going to go lower. I know that you guys don't want to hear that because that means the altcoins are going to go lower. And I think that we're in for like a black swan event in the imminent future that leads there. We're already starting to fall off the cliff here. If you're in the market, like this is just part of these cycles. You ride them up and down. I don't think the downturn is going to be very long lived for XRP in particular. I do think that the black swan is going to be the reverse carry trade. I think that oil, we're right here on the precipice of the U.S. engaging with Iran in some capacity. You had permission domains go live on the XRPL here just recently. We still need permission dexes for payments to really be processed at scale on the mainnet for the XRPL. But Corda doesn't need either one of those things. Corda can use the Corda settler, and it can settle through XRP between the siloed permissioned ecosystems that are built out there for all the institutions and banks that they work with. They don't require any of these additional amendments on the XRPL. They've been able to settle through XRP for years at this point. They just need liquidity in XRP to be able to facilitate that. So what does that come down to? Well, supply and demand. We need a supply shock. We're having tons of XRP eaten off of the OTC desk and the dark pools on a daily basis while price is still falling. So even more volume on those ETFs, gobbling up more XRP, because it's not like the price trades different on the dark pools, the OTC desk, than what you see on the exchange. So they are actually aggregating XRP at an accelerated rate right now. And because of that, I think that there's going to come a point where, it's kind of a rubber band type effect for XRP. There's not going to be any supply left on the OTC and the dark pools. And you're going to see, things kind of snap where all that volume moves over to the exchanges at one time. I'm going to look at, so I'm going to walk you guys through how to go find stuff on using XRP Scan. Okay. So you might follow the account Whale Alert if you're over there on Twitter. They monitor all the different blockchains and show large transactions, which I think is cool. I don't know how many people follow this account. It's got to be millions of people following this account. Yeah, 2.8 million people. And all they do is just post large transactions across these blockchains. Each month when the escrow is unlocked for Ripple, they obviously see that and they post it so that people can see, that it's happened. I asked early in the day on the first, what about the escrow unlock? Because it's available at midnight UTC time and it hadn't been done. and that was nice enough to go over there and do that. I guess anybody can unlock an escrow. It just goes to the wallet where it's supposed to go. So anyway, you can go to that account. You can click on, one of those transactions where it shows it unlocked the escrow. If you click into that, it'll take you to Whale Alert's website. It shows you the receiver and the sender. You click on the wallet address that's the sender, and they've recreated another escrow for 400 million XRP. This wallet currently has 199 XRP in it. So we're going to go to the other one where that was the receiver of the escrow. So let's see here. There was a few payments out. So they sent it to Ripple 20. Ripple 28 currently has 500 million XRP sitting in it. So they haven't sold any of this XRP onto the market. Ripple still is holding that 500 million XRP that they didn't re-escrow. And there's some of that left over from the previous escrow. They re-escrowed about 700 million XRP off of this distribution. So they've sent a couple micropayments out of this wallet. Actually, they've sent it to this wallet, a couple of micropayments, which is weird. But you can see the full provenance and total transactions of all of these wallets, and they're publicly labeled as Ripple's wallets over there. I'd highly recommend, like this is a public blockchain, figure out how this stuff works. I think it's super interesting that you can see what Ripple's doing with their XRP, and it's transparent and open like this. A lot of people will tell you they control the, this much XRP. They do have a lot of XRP, but most of it's in escrow. They can't do anything with it. They can't dump it on the market. They get an unlock of 1 billion every single first of each month. And they've been re-escrowing 700 million XRP back onto the end of the escrow. And they'll take, 300-400 million. And sometimes they do sell that onto the market in the OTC desk and dark pools to be able to fund their business. They haven't done that with this XRP. It's still sitting there in their account. So could they at some point in the near future? Sure. But as of today, and this is the cool thing, again, you can see it 24/7, 365 all the time, what they're doing and where it's at. So if they do send it over to Binance or, another exchange or another wallet, you'll be able to, we'll stay on top of that. But as of today, there's no new additional XRP available for the OTC desk and dark pools. Jake Claver LLC, are you real? No, Jake Claver LLC is a scam account. I'm just Jake Claver on TikTok. So that's where that's at. And I do think that we are inbound for a supply shock here in the near future. Got a bunch of things here on the horizon. Everything for the domino theory is right here on the precipice of playing out. Some people do think that we need permission dexes, before we actually get price appreciation. That's possible. I still am very confident that we're going to see price appreciation before the Clarity Act. We did get the government shutdown, kicked. So the Trump did sign the funding bill for the government after they passed it through the House and the Senate. So that's no longer a concern here. And they should be able to move forward with regulation around the Clarity Act before midterms. That would be the goal. There's been a few different people that have talked about, kind of before April or late March, which again, kind of coincides with the midterms. You would want to get it done before then. And I think that XRP will appreciate before the Clarity Act is passed. So if you think it's going to get passed in the next 30 to 45 days, that should also tell you something about what I think is going to happen with XRP. Pretty confident on that we're going to see price appreciation before the Clarity Act goes through. I'm a wonderful wife with the tea. Thank you. So all that being said, you've got the price falling though, right? We've had a lot of people start to onboard with DWP here recently that I think, we're waiting to buy larger amounts of XRP. It's been difficult, if you were buying XRP over the last 12 months and you didn't have as much dry powder, it would have been difficult to get to 50,000 XRP. But with the price where it's at, it's a lot more attainable for a lot more folks. So I've seen people, we've seen a pretty good inflow here recently of people that have acquired more XRP in order to be able to work with digital wealth partners and hold their assets there at Anchorage. Got some really cool products coming to market that I'm excited to talk to you guys about in the near future, that I think are going to address a lot of people's concerns with the fees there at Anchorage, which is a very valid concern, right? Like, you want all the benefits, you want the custody, you want the insurance and all of the assurances and benefits that that provides, but there's a cost associated with it. And if you have a way to be able to make sure that that cost is taken care of, then it makes a lot more sense. So, especially for people that have a little bit less than like $5 million worth of XRP, they're pretty apprehensive. They're like, hey, it's pretty expensive to move stuff over here if we're not making money on it. And those people can participate in the fund products that we have because they would be accredited. But those are also on a quarterly basis on the payout. The products that we're going to be bringing to market in short order, hopefully, will have a monthly payout in order to be able to cover the fees that are also assessed monthly. So believe me, like, I've been working on this stuff. Nobody wants it more than I do. If you want to learn more about that, if you want to have a conversation with an advisor, they are giving free consults to qualified people right now. All you have to do is go to digitalwealthpartners.net and go to the contact us page, and they will ask you a couple questions. And then if you qualify, they will give you a free consult. I've got a couple I've got one super chat here that we missed last week. I got a couple more already up on the board here. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Wednesday to come hang out with me and ask great questions. And we'll go ahead and get into it. All right. So Eric E Money says, hey, Jake, missed my super chat. I'm sorry about that, my man. Again, I tell people just DM us and we will follow up with you, and I'll try to get it on here on the next one. He says, before you mentioned XRP would depeg from Bitcoin if BlackRock ETF hits. If they don't come out in 2026 and we follow Bitcoin to 50K, where does that leave XRP? Very low. Bitcoin, I think, is actually going to fall lower than 50K. If you had a traditional cycle, I don't know that guy's name. He kind of looks like a bird over there. And I'm not trying to throw shade on him. I'm just trying to think of his name. With the glasses. He's funny. Anyway, he's a bit like, he's very dramatic on a lot of his videos, which gets people's attention. Like, I don't have anything bad to say about him. But he was talking about, the 4-year cycles and how those persist, and how the first drawdown was like 94%, and then it was 88%, and the last one was 70-something%. And this one, he thinks is going to be, even if it was just 50% from the all-time high, we would be back to like $50,000 Bitcoin, like you're talking about here. Well, actually 126 was the high, so it'd be 63 would be a 50% drawdown. I think that it is going to be somewhere around 70%. If we followed a traditional cycle, but I think we're going to have some other black swan type events with Tether and the reverse carry trade and other things that push Bitcoin much lower, because you're also going to have additional pressures from the ETFs that drive the market down. When we see that volatility come through for those things, you're going to see XRP flip ETH and Bitcoin. We just need somewhere between a $7 and $13 XRP, and it flips both of them. It's not like that crazy for that to happen. So that would be where XRP would decouple. But if they do, in the meantime here, until we do see the reverse carry trade unwind and BlackRock file their ETF for XRP to drive the price and demand for it and cause that supply shock, it is going to continue to trend with the market. And how long that's going to go on for, I don't know. I wish I could give you the play-by-play and be like, on this day, this is going to happen and all that stuff. Obviously, I don't know. Okay. I know what's going to happen. I just don't know when it's going to happen. Again, these are my opinions. I should probably give my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always speak with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. The opinions shared here are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or Digital Wealth Partners, which is our subsidiary that's an SEC registered RIA. So now that that's out of the way. To your point, it will continue to follow BTC until there are events that play out that cause it to decouple. from the market action and the rest of the market. So, what does that mean? Should you have some dry powder? Should you dollar cost average down? Should you do other stuff? That's up to you. I do think that we could go lower. Now, should you sell and buy back? Again, I can't tell you what to do. I've had multiple people call me today and ask that question. You do you. I would rather be in, because in my mind, at any time, this could escalate in the Middle East and then we're off to the races. And if you're not in, you're not in. I would rather be early than 1 minute late. So I just continue to buy as I have additional cash. I'm averaging up because the majority of the XRP I bought was, 20, 30, 40, 50 cents. And many of our clients are that way too. But many people have bought over the last year and just found this. And so you are averaging down if you are executing those buys. Or you can tax loss harvest, right? So if you are down, let's say you bought at $3 or $3.30 and you're down at $1.50, you could sell here and buy back, and you're going to lock in those capital losses to be able to offset some of the capital gains when you do have appreciation on it. So again, I'm not a tax professional on that side either. They may do away with the wash rule not being a thing in crypto this year. But as of today, they haven't done that. And so if you want to go talk to your CPA, some of them are going to be cowboys and some of them are going to be super conservative. But if your CPA is a bit more of a cowboy and they're willing to, walk that line with you, selling while you're down and buying back, you are going to have to pay the fees on the exchange, and you probably won't have the same amount. You'll have 2% less or 3% less, whatever the cost is for those transactions. But you are going to be able to lock in those capital losses. So might be something to look at or have a conversation with your CPA around. All right, we got Dr. Dennis. He says, hello, Jake. If Iran conflict triggers a rapid reverse carry trade before BlackRock supply shock, how does that change the big picture? That is how I think it's going to play out, Dr. Dennis. It's a problem reaction solution, right? It's not like it's, BlackRock launches this and then that happens. Of course, that could be the case, right? Like, they have been very methodical about doing things to be proactive rather than reactive in this whole scenario. If you go back and watch my first domino theory, I thought that they were going to have to rush a bunch of things through and then launch ETFs, and all these things were going to be like lined up to go and then be able to push the button and make them happen. It's been a bit more methodical than that. So to your point, it could be the other way around, where we do get, some type of decoupling for XRP. They start to push liquidity into it. The reverse carry trade unwinds, and we see a rotation out of the Bitcoin ETFs into the XRP ETFs to continue to drive that volume. And then it's used to be able to provide a liquidity cushion over there for the FX market by Japan. And then, also the back end of the stock market and the settlement there continues to drive the price and the volume. So which one happens first? Again, like, I can see all the dominoes. What order they fall in, not sure. I know oil's first. I know the reverse carry trade's after that. Is the ETF before or after that? I don't know. Is Tether would be after that. Bitcoin would be after that. Currency risk would be after that. But we have the stablecoin bill that's already been done. It's been put in place. You already have ETFs that have been launched to drive the supply down, so that there is a limited supply so that supply shock can happen. Clarity's been kicked out, so XRP has a moat here to be used in this capacity, while everything else is still waiting on Clarity. There's been a lot of things that have lined up with what I said, but there's also been things that have been, like I said, a bit more methodical, and they've been pre-done so that they don't have to like rush all of it through at the same time. I think they're going to wait till like the last second for the BlackRock ETF when it is necessary, because if they do it any sooner than that, it is going to cause a decoupling, which we already saw in the past when people found the trust filing there in Delaware. Mike, my man, he says, Mr. Jake, the Emperor of Legends. Wow. Okay. I will take it. Thank you for the kind words. He says, if you can, tell us about the MasterCard going live on the XRPL and Yellow and the newly tokenized Diamond on XRPL. So 3 different things here. MasterCard partnership with Ripple and the XRPL has been ongoing for a long time. I'm going to circle back to these 3 in just a second, though. There was something that I did here at the Onondo Summit that they kind of glanced over. It was like the 3rd or 4th slide when they were presenting. Guess where all of the treasuries that they issue settle back to? The XRPL. They were showing Nexus, and they showed their stable coin and their treasury product. And then like the 3rd slide, they showed Figure Markets, one other exchange, and the XRPL for where they settled back to with their treasuries, which I thought was really cool. So if they're settling back to the XRPL with treasuries, they're also got their, their stock and perp market that they brought. Guess where that's probably going to settle back to. Just have to see. So anyway, back to MasterCard. We talked to MasterCard when I was in Dubai in 2024. So this has been a couple years ago. It was actually about 2 years ago. Next week was the last time that I've been to Dubai. We're going to go back this year. We're going to open some offices there. We talked to MasterCard while we were there, and that's when I found out that they had the full tracking and tracing product that I didn't know about. They've been building out crypto rails and payment solutions for a decade. Like, it's not new for them. This is just the implementation of that and the formalization of it. So they've had these products. They've had a full division working on it for an extended period of time. And in my mind, they've had another 2 years to really build this out and make sure that they're able to scale it. Yellow is, I think Yellow is Chris Larson's project. Let me verify that. Chris Larson. Brags on Yellow investment amid XRPL EVM sidechain. So they started this about 2 years ago also. This article shows that Yellow Network secured $10 million in seed funding in 2024, led by Chris Larson himself. Yellow. We looked at this the other day. Yellow. Yellow.com. I mean, it shows XRP on here. I thought it was a private market type thing. We'll go to the Twitter. The Twitter's going to know. So Yellow is Web3 blockchain products and service ecosystem, building next-gen DeFi experiences for exchanges, brokers, and traders. Again, I think 2026 is going to be a big, big year for the integration of TradFi and DeFi. You need clear rules of the road around that. I think that they're probably going to strip that out of the Clarity Act because that's the main point of contention in order to be able to get clarity for what these assets are. I think there's going to be 3 different forms of legislation that gets passed. We've got the Stablecoin Bill, the Genius Act. We've got the Clarity Act that I think will come through, and I think there'll be a DeFi bill later on around that. So, that's really kind of what a lot of this stuff is going to be predicated on here is what is stated in that bill and how they regulate these things. But to see Yellow, kind of pushing that forward, I think they're going to do very, very well. And obviously they're going to be integrated with the XRPL because of Chris and a lot of what they're doing. And then last but not least, the Diamond component. So that was in the UAE. That was also a big deal. I think it was like $280 million worth of diamonds that were tokenized on the XRPL. And, we're going to see more and more of these real world assets tokenized on chain. You've got HELOCs are already being done on the XRPL in Southeast Asia. You've got gold tokenized on the XRPL. I think you're going to continue to see other commodities and valuable items tokenized on the XRPL. It's the most institutional blockchain. You've got credentials, you've got digital identity, you've got permission domains, you're going to have permission dexes, you're going to have liquidity pools, AMMs, borrow, lend, pseudo accounts, all of the stuff that you want for the asset to be able to stay in one place and then still kind of have your cake and eat it too. They're creating on this blockchain. And so if you had any type of collateral, oh, that was the other thing I was going to talk about. I'm glad you brought that up on the diamonds and the collateral piece. Hype. I don't know if y'all saw Ripple Prime is now integrated with Hyperliquid. So for those that are in the mastermind, I did an audio only interview with Mike Higgins, who just joined Twitter today over there from Ripple Prime. So if you're in the mastermind, you had access and you got to listen to what Ripple Prime, where they've been, what happened, why they were acquired by Ripple, and where they're going. He did a fantastic job of breaking that down. And again, that's only available for people there in the mastermind. So would encourage people to join the mastermind if you want access to that. Mike Higgins, again, working there at Hidden Road. He went from zero. Let's see where Mike's at the end of the day here. It's his first day on Twitter. I shouted him out first thing when I saw him this morning. Mike is already at 12,500 followers there on Twitter. So if you don't follow Mike on Twitter, I would encourage you to do that. He's going to be putting out a lot of information when it comes to Ripple Prime and everything going on over there with Hidden Road and the products that we're in the market. And he did, retweet the Hyperliquid deal that Ripple put out. So back to the collateral. And I made a tweet about this earlier today. XRP is the most pristine collateral ever. Like there's nothing that's ever going to be more pristine collateral than XRP. And so for it to be used as collateral for these derivatives markets, it was a big deal. So what Onondo is doing is you can have tokenized stocks on their platform, and you can use that as collateral to be able to open positions to hedge using perps against that position. So if you thought gold was going to rise, but you also wanted to short gold in case you were wrong, you could use the gold that you bought or the stock that you bought over there on Onondo, and then open a position with some leverage to the downside. Perps don't expire like options do, but that's a little bit riskier. Like, you need to understand what you're doing if you're trading perps. Perps for crypto are not available here domestically in the U.S. Because there's not enough regulation around it. I think they may have. I don't know. I have to check on that. I know that I saw something come across the desk for the SEC to approve it, but I don't remember if they did or not. As far as I'm aware, you still have to do perps offshore. So that's one of the things that they said was that this is available for their international clients. They're trying to democratize access to the U.S. stock market for people that are international, and they are opening this 20x leverage product where you can buy whatever the stock is and use that as collateral on the perps. But anyway, circling back to Hyperledger and the XRPL, if you're able to utilize XRP as collateral, that's going to continue to drive demand for XRP. So you've already seen, wrapped XRP on Solana. We had a video on YouTube that came out about that today. The more blockchains that allow XRP to be collateral on that blockchain, the more XRP is going to be locked up. Guess what that does to XRP's supply that's available for trading and settlement? Less and less and less over time. Same thing for these DeFi products. Same thing for a lot of the financial products we're putting together to be able to put XRP to work. We're using it as collateral in some capacity because it is, in my opinion, the best collateral in the world that has ever existed. It's finite. It moves value I think it will be backed by all of the transactions globally. Everything will settle back to the XRPL. And if it's used as collateral in these other ecosystems, that's literally what happens, because all those other transactions happen using the value of XRP. And when you go to settle all of that up, it's going to have to settle back to the mainnet on the XRPL. So all of this is super, super bullish for the XRPL. And Hyperliquid, how fast they've grown over the last year has been wild to see. This perps market on chain that they've built and their token and everything that they've been doing. Super exciting ecosystem. And to see that partnership with Ripple Prime today, I couldn't have been better. Was super excited about it. So back to the diamonds, though. I think that there'll be lots of other issued assets on the XRPL that you can then use as collateral in those same applications. So like if you wanted to invest in diamonds and short gold, or invest in diamonds and also, go long oil, you would be able to use that same collateral and be long both those positions, and one of them would have leverage. But for professional traders to be able to hedge your position with the same collateral is fantastic. And I think a lot of people are going to be wanting to do that on chain in the near future. Roscoe says, Mr. Muscles, what's up, dude? I see crypto bank heads at the White House protecting their interest. Where was the retail representation protecting ours? I'm salty with Coinbase. They want yield, then become a bank. They want yield, then become a bank. What do you say? I'm doing my best. Like, we're on the digital chamber. We were the only RIA that even proposed any legislation or stuff in the write-up or the letters to the SEC on how this stuff should work. They took all of our comments. They just want to learn, right? But you have to have the money to be in the room. It's not like it's pay to play. Lobbying is pay to play. And to be part of Stand with Crypto or Fair Shake or the Digital Chamber or any of these groups that are advocating for crypto regulation, they take money from backers, right? Like, that's how this works. And so the people with the most money tend to be the people in the room making the decisions. I'm not here to say that that's the correct way about, to go about this. People aren't elected, but we live in a capitalistic society, right? And you derive a lot of benefits from that, either tangentially or directly, depending on how you participate in the economy. Or you may think it sucks and we need to move to socialism, which I would disagree with, but that's a separate conversation. But all of that kind of goes back to that premise, right? And Ripple doesn't care either way because they are a bank. They just want to get something passed so that people can participate and they can move forward with their business, and we can see the adoption of these assets and these networks. There are other people, like you pointed out here, that have certain agendas, and they're entrenched and they have a moat in certain ways, and they don't want to give those things up, which I can also appreciate, right? Like, running a business, if you have proprietary IP or positioning or something that you've structured that other people don't have, you don't want the competition. And if you've got the money to lobby to be able to maintain that spot, again, capitalism. But all that being said, I do want what's best for people in general. And I think competition breeds better customer service, better products, better everything for retail. Unfortunately, I will tell you this, these institutions don't really they don't care about retail. Retail is on the bottom of the totem pole, which is actually the most important thing. I don't know why they say that's like the unimportant thing. Like, if you talk to Indians, the bottom of the totem pole is the most important. What's the top at the top is least important. Anyway, side tangent. But yeah, they do not care about what retail's needs are or wants are. Retail doesn't make up much of this market cap anymore. It is primarily institutional. It's financial products and solutions that have aggregated assets and democratized access to it through traditional means or products. Franklin Templeton, Wisdom Tree, Citibank, Goldman, BNY, all of them. are chomping at the bit to leverage these networks and assets in ways to be able to get more exposure for their client base, which are high net worth individuals, family offices, hedge funds, venture capital, private equity, treasury management. Who did I talk to? I think it was Ondo. I was talking to Ondo when I first got there. And I told him, the size of our, what we manage, about $1 billion, which is down now because of the price, but, how much we had in our hedge fund, and they really didn't care. They're looking for people that have hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars. That's what it felt like, for them to tokenize on Ondo. Like, they're looking for huge, and again, like I said, they're tokenizing. Their next play is to tokenize equities, like $600 trillion. They don't care about our measly $1 billion or $400 million in a hedge fund. So I get that, but that just kind of tells you again the point I'm making here, which is retail is a blip on the map. They're not worried about how it affects the average person, and unless there is an average person like myself that has the ability to be in the room and sit there and try to uphold those interests, they're going to be foregone. So I'm there. I'm trying to advocate for people. We want to democratize access to stuff. We want to create solutions that empower retail to be able to get access to stuff that they normally wouldn't have. And we'll continue to do that. And as XRP appreciates, we'll become a much louder voice for those things. But yeah, I again, it all comes back to capitalism. It all comes back to the money. It all comes back to how the system works, the paradigm, which I agree there needs to be changes to, but there's also a lot of benefits that we have derived from the way that things operate. So I don't have all the answers, and that's why I hire people smarter than me most of the time to work with. Retired Fire Chief says, "Hey Jake, if Bitcoin continues to crash and MicroStrategy goes under, do you think that will cause XRP and other utility tokens to rapidly decouple from Bitcoin?" So I had the same question earlier today, and I actually got a really good answer. So if you want to go to Smoke over there on Twitter, it's SMQ KEDQG, like Smoke Dog, but with 2 Q's for the O's. He put out a tweet talking about MicroStrategy and why they would get liquidated, or really kind of why they won't get liquidated. So I'll read this here because it was pretty telling for me. I thought that there may be some products where they would be margin called, or they would have to start to sell assets to meet obligations. But based on what he says here, and again, this is Smoke words, not mine, so maybe there's something here again that I'm missing, but he does a lot of really good research. Again, good account to follow over there on X. He says, Michael Saylor's margin call is unlikely. MicroStrategy's entire holding of 713,000 Bitcoin is unencumbered, meaning it is not pledged as collateral for any loans, and thereby preventing lenders from seizing or forcing sale of these assets during price declines. The company, approximately $8.2 billion in convertible debt, has no maturities, which is what I was concerned about, until 2027 or later, alleviating the immediate pressure to repay these obligations through selling Bitcoin, which is exactly what I thought they would have to do if some of those were coming due, but apparently they're not. Although the recent Bitcoin dip has positioned MicroStrategy stock well below Michael Saylor's average purchase price of around $7,600 or $76,000 per Bitcoin, this does not initiate automatic sales and constitutes only unrealized losses at this time. So they're currently at about $2.1 billion in unrealized losses. Tom Lee's down even more than that. I think he's over $5 billion in unrealized losses. He spoke at the event there. He was up there with Dan Moorhead from Pantera. Did a great job, great panel on stuff. But from everything I can tell, I don't see a reason where Michael Saylor is going to have to liquidate Bitcoin right now. Unless Smoke missed something, which he's pretty thorough. So I don't know that that's going to be the case. I'm going to take it at face value. I would have to go do some more research on my own. Jacob King is another account, but he's always super bearish on Bitcoin and Tether, which I am too, right, over the long term. But again, I try to take opinions from multiple people, get my information from multiple sources, and then make the decisions, kind of critically think through that in order to be able to define how I think it's going to play out. So after assessing what I could today, prior to this conversation, I don't think there's any imminent cause for Michael Saylor to have to sell his Bitcoin to continue to exacerbate downside in Bitcoin. I would think that they would try to raise more capital and buy. Rockin' HL says, I know we are seeing downside movement, but these last two amendments needed for the XRPL to fly. Keep the keep grind going. Many appreciate it. God bless you. Appreciate it, man. So again, Corda can utilize the XRPL to settle today as long as there's enough liquidity and clarity on the asset. So we got clarity. We just need, more price appreciation and liquidity in the asset for them to start using it. But for other people to adopt the mainnet and for Ripple to scale out, utilizing XRP to settle, yes, we do need both of these amendments. We got permission domains, we have credentials and digital ID. That allows people with those credentials and things to be able to see order books, which allows for the zero knowledge proof type component. You have to qualify to be able to view things, which I'm glad for. Banks want that, right? In order to be able to operate on a public blockchain, they need some way to be able to hold their information separate of what's out there publicly available. And this allows them to do that. So now we just need permission dexes. Once we get permission dexes, you've seen pseudo accounts and you've seen borrow lend get put up for vote. Once we have permission dexes, I think you'll also see liquidity pools get put up for vote. So you'll have 64, 65, and 66. We have a 2-week waiting period until the 18th of this month is when permission dexes should go live, because that was voted on earlier today and it passed right after permission domains went live. I think it was Biddy was the other validator that finally voted yes on permission dex earlier today. And so we've got a 2-week holding period until that goes live. And then, like I said, I think immediately after that, you're going to see liquidity pools listed as an amendment on the XRPL for vote. It'll have to go through the voting process. They'll probably have to push some fixes for some of the stuff. So that's one of the other things that could happen here. Almost not every amendment, but a lot of the amendments that have been passed on the XRPL, they go through a trial period. They try to debug them. They do everything that they can. And once they go live, they'll find something inevitably that they have to push a fix for. So that could be the case for both permission domains and permission dexes. If there are fixes that need to happen, that could also push things further out for adoption. But again, none of that matters because in my mind, because Corda can go ahead and use it. Where are we at on price? I got people texting me and freaking out. So price falling. Where are we at? Yeah, 144. Bitcoin continues lower here. I will say this, like the whole theme the whole time it's been a phoenix rises from the ashes. There's got to be ashes. Things have to burn. Problems have to happen before we have a meteoric rise. And I've talked about problem, reaction, solution the whole time. I'm not surprised to see the price, continuing to fall here. We talked about, actually, this is in the mastermind that we talked about this, but the dippity dip dip. I don't know if you guys have seen that meme where there's like church pews and there's a person that's got a gun, and then there's a person behind him that has a gun, and there's a person behind that person that has a gun, and then there's a guy up in like the choir pews that has a sniper on all three of them, and it's like the dippity dip dip dippy dip. We're probably going to see more downside here. Like I do think we're going to have a big move to the downside again when things escalate there in the Middle East. but that'll be short-lived because they're going to need XRP. They're going to have to drive, volume to be able to push it to a price where they can use it to be able to shore things up. That's the only way out of this deal. So, does that happen tonight? Does it happen tomorrow? Is it next week? Is it next month? I don't know. I don't have the answer. But I'm highly confident that it happens before they pass the Clarity Act, and it could be right before. So, but I'm going to die on that hill. It's going to happen before the Clarity Act. Faithful 10 says, "Hey Jake, thanks for all that you do. Is 50K XRP required to onboard here to stay if price continues to drop? Batting 700 is a solid average." Appreciate that, man. Yeah, it's 50,000 XRP. So, what's current price? We got 143, 144. So if you bought 50,000 XRP right now, it'd be like $68,000, $70,000, call it, to buy 50,000 XRP. This is the cheapest. It's half the price of what it was at the high last year. Like, if you like it at $3, you should love it at 140. Where are we at on the fear and greed index? Let's take a look at that. I'm sure that things are starting to get to the low end of the fear and greed index. When I looked at it the other day, we were at 15. We're currently at 11. We are in extreme fear right now. Extreme fear tends to be an awesome time to buy. And again, I'm not a financial advisor. I can't tell you what to do. If you want to talk to our team at Digital Wealth Partners, they can tell you to buy XRP and other cryptos right now. I can't do that. I can tell you what I'm doing, which is buying, but you got to make your own decisions and talk to professionals to do it. If you, well, can I share my screen on this thing? I'm sure I can. Hold on. We're gonna try this. We're gonna pull it out here. Share screen. I understand. Fear and greed index. How about that? Can you guys see that over here on YouTube? I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, make sure you can. First it says crying and buying. Here we go. All right, you guys can see this now. Sorry, TikTok, you cannot see this. In this history of the fear and greed index, this goes all the way back to July of 2023. You can see that there's been 1, 2, 3 times in the past 3 years, ish, 2.5 years, that we've been in this region of the fear and greed index. And those have all been good opportunities. If you had bought, in any of those, you would probably still be up on the majority of your positions. I say that, it just barely dipped in here. So if this was in 25. Yeah, you may not be up on positions if you bought here, but you would still be at a better dollar cost average than other people that bought up here in the green or the extreme greed. Like, these tend to be really good times to sell in this region here. Like, if you had sold these and bought these, you would be extremely well positioned in the market. You can see that, a lot of the time it doesn't ever quite get to extreme greed, and a lot of the time it doesn't ever get to extreme fear. But those tend to be the best times in the market to either, sell some of your position or buy more, back up the truck, as they say, when the market is in extreme fear. So again, I can't tell you what to do. For, you to go take out loans or over leverage yourself or do anything crazy. That would be irresponsible. Please don't do those things. Don't put yourself in a position where you're not able to meet your obligations or other stuff. But with where extreme fear is right now, this is probably a good time to start looking at allocating if you are out of the market. All right. We already did this one. We're going to scroll on down. I am not going to get to all the super chats tonight. We're about an hour in. I am going to go to the bottom and work my way back up. I would hold off on any more super chats. If you haven't put one in, you can just email us. You can email us at info@digitalfamilyoffice.io. And our team there is likely going to be able to answer any of your questions around the estate planning, LLCs, trust, tax prepare. We are not a tax preparer, but we work with a strategic partner on that, and we offer that service now. We'll do living trusts, we'll do irrevocable trusts, we'll do LLCs, both domestic and international. We've got insurance products, we've got wealth management, really end-to-end full private client services. So, bill pay, accounting, concierge service. The building that we looked at today, well, not the building, but the office that we looked at today in New York, there's a tenant there that does yachts. They're the largest yacht broker in the US. So, if you need those things, and you will post price appreciation, I'm sure. But if you need something now, again, you can just email our team over there and they'll direct you to the right person. And we continue to aggregate contacts. If you come across somebody in your part of the world, because I know we have a lot of international viewers on here that does great work that you trust and has helped you, and you want them to be able to get access to a lot more people to help them in your region, reach out, make an introduction to us. We want to be an aggregator and a network provider for the best of the best professionals across the world that have crypto expertise. So we would always, welcome an introduction if that's something that you would be so kind to do. Logan Williams, he says, "Hey Jake, thanks for all that you do. Carbon 2 member here. Awesome, dude. Will DWP keep the same amount after price appreciation for those with smaller bags, or 2,000 or less?" So it'll be a dollar denominated amount post price appreciation. Those that are in the mastermind will be at a lesser amount that they'll still be able to access DWP with. And then publicly, we will be at 20 million. Will be our minimum dollar amount post price appreciation for XRP. And when I say price appreciation, I'm talking about $100 XRP. So that's 20,000 XRP. Well, yeah, 20,000 XRP, we need 1,000 XRP, $1,000 XRP to be at 20 million, which I don't think is like that far in the future, especially if all the macroeconomics and all the other things play out that I'm talking about. 4-digit XRP is an inevitability in my mind. So at that point, it'll be 20,000 XRP. But we are working on some partnerships and solutions to bring things to market where it democratizes access and lowers costs for people. So many people are in your camp, right? There's a ton of people out there that have 500 XRP. They got 5,000 XRP. They got 8,000 XRP. It's going to be a little bit before the price gets to a high enough amount that they're able to work with us directly on the wealth management side or the family office side. And so we're cultivating relationships and curating products right now that will democratize access to people with that much, to make sure that you have access to a lot of the same products that we're bringing to market. And I've talked about this before. I mentioned it on the Monday Live, but again, Tesla started with the Roadster, right? Like they started with the high-end product, and now they've worked their way down and democratized access to what they're doing. We're doing the same thing, right? So we work with these family offices, we work with high net worth individuals, we've gotten to $1 billion under management. We're starting to aggregate really cool partnerships and stuff that we're going to be able to bring to market that we've been working on for a long time. And once those things are to market, we'll continue to democratize access over time to people that hold lesser and lesser amounts. So we haven't forgot about you. Again, the whole theme behind the Beyond Work Mastermind is to help 1 million people become financially free. We're not going to do that by not helping out the little guy, right? Like people that already have money, they need these services, and that's great. We want to help them, and we want to create those things, and they are, what has helped us, be able to get to the situation that we're in. But over the long term, it's about democratization of access. Like that's the whole point of Onondo, right? So they were like, most people think you would want to tokenize illiquid assets to provide liquidity. We tokenize liquid assets to provide access. That's what their focus is using on-chain technology, blockchain, smart contracts, the tokenization of these financial products to provide access to everybody globally. There's 1.7 billion people on the planet that don't have access to a bank account. Like they're underserved on the financial services side. This allows them access to stocks. Only 10% of the people in the US even own stocks. Is that not wild? It might be a little bit more than that now. This was like 5 years ago when that metric was accurate. So around 2020. But most people have no allocation to investment. And that's why the rich get richer, because they have hedges against inflation. They own assets that appreciate as the dollar continues to deflate in value, while everybody else is still living on fiat and doesn't ever get past, the point where they're able to even buy anything to grow any wealth. We want to change that. We want to provide financial education. We want to provide products. We want to provide solutions and access to things so that even the little guy can, get a leg up. Scrolling on up. Logan, appreciate you on the super chat, my man. And the other question. Maybe we will get through all the super chats tonight. They're a little scarcer than usual. We got United States Marine Corps 0311 Luke says, why couldn't they reuse the same XRP many times a day, deducting the necessary price point? It's a good question, Luke. And you are accurate. That is correct that they can use the same XRP multiple times a day. So my limitation on that, I'm just going to go with Robbie Mitchnick, because him being at Ripple and then going to be the head of digital assets at BlackRock and creating the calculator that shows how XRP gets to $10,000 a piece. That's my benchmark. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what he put in there for reuse of XRP. The most in his calculator that XRP was able to be reused in the same day was 10 times. So you can take 10 off whatever you think the price could go to. So again, that comes back to available supply, total volume across the network. But you could reuse that same XRP multiple times a day. I don't think that's going to be happening at scale. I don't think all of those XRP are going to be being used 10 times a day. But I could be wrong about that. So, if you thought it was going to go to a $500 XRP in order to be able to meet demand for Swift, it could be a $50 XRP if they could use all of that XRP that Swift uses up to 10 times a day. It's probably going to be more than that. It's going to be more in line with the Pareto principle, right? There'll be 20 or 80% of that XRP that's used that amount, and the rest of it will be used less than that. Probably be 20% of the XRP that does 80% of the transaction volume, and the rest of it just sits there. So, you can do the math on that. It's still a much higher price than what it is today that would be needed in order to be able to facilitate that, even if they did use it multiple times. He also says, if orchestrated, wouldn't Epstein files say that? He maybe asked me something up above. If orchestrated, wouldn't the Epstein files say that? So there's another 50% of the Epstein files that haven't been released yet. Just so you'll know. Like, they're slow rolling this. We've seen enough now. We know that they were involved in looking at Bitcoin and ETH and building something in this, this area, and they didn't want Ripple and so Ripple and XLM to be successful because it was in opposition to whatever they were building. We don't know what they were building though. Is it Tether? Was it on Ethereum? Was it the Lightning Network on the Bitcoin blockchain? What was Epstein using to be able to transact and scale their operations, right? I'm pretty confident that that's going to come out in the other half of these documents here. Like, you're going to know how they were leveraging this technology and what they were doing. They had taken over 60% of the validators they were invested in, which I kind of knew that had taken place. I didn't know it was Epstein that had done it, but when the Bitcoin network forked in 2014 and Bitcoin Cash was created, they didn't upgrade the block size, and it really truncated the ability of the network to scale. And that's why a lot of people were uncertain whether, Bitcoin, the original chain, or Bitcoin Cash was going to be the Bitcoin on the other side of that. Because Satoshi's vision was that you would continue to expand the block size in order to be able to continue to have peer-to-peer payments and that were cheap and fast, and they, basically stopped that, and that's why it's been relegated to just digital gold after that, because it is expensive and slow to move. But I'm waiting on the other half of these files. And again, this was on my bingo card. You guys may know, I put out a tweet almost a year ago, and I said, what if Epstein was involved with Bitcoin? What would that do to the price? Well, we're starting to fall. I don't know if there's a direct correlation. There may be a there. We'll have to see how everything plays out. Robert says, hey there, Mr. XRP Yoda. What's up, dude? Carbon One here. Thank you and your team for all that you do. BlackRock has decreased their Bitcoin holding by 10 billion USD. They're going to buy XRP. Yeah. I'm pretty sure they're de-risking for many reasons, but I think a lot of that liquidity is probably going to make its way over there into XRP. John, Mr. Burnett, he says, Mr. Legend, it seems that the banks are choosing chaos, not to let go of control and power. They make it look like they don't want to innovate, or want crypto to innovate. So here's the deal on DeFi, okay? Y'all aren't going to like this. I kind of agree with the Democrats on the DeFi. But we operate in a very regulated space, okay? There needs to be some oversight. There needs to be some recourse. There needs to be something in these ecosystems that drives accountability. Because we've seen what happens when there isn't. People get rugged. People get scammed. People get their money taken. The investor protections aren't there. People don't understand what they're signing or participating in. The disclosures aren't there. Like, there's a ton of stuff in this space that makes it the wild, wild west. And that's why there's a lot of opportunity, but that's also why most people lose a lot of money learning in this space. And you got to be really callous over time in order to continue to participate. I mean, look at the price moving right now. Like, most people, if they saw this happen to their portfolio, they would be scrambling to sell everything immediately. They'd call their financial advisor and have an emotional rash decision and liquidate their positions because they think the sky is falling. This is the time to buy when the market's down. But anyway, going back to the Clarity Act and the banks, they just want, like, what XRPL is building. They want KYC, AML, BIS, OFAC. They want all of these same things that you get in TradFi applied to on-chain infrastructure. And the OGs that are part of this space, and I can't blame them for this, they've operated without all that stuff all this time. And they don't want to implement it. They want zero knowledge proof. They know that all of it's possible to be able to, do zero knowledge proof and somebody else not take your data. And I think we'll get there. One of the things that the Wisdom Tree guy talked about on stage, Mr. Peck, while he was there at Onondo, was digital identity. He was the only one that really kind of harped on that, which I thought that was pretty interesting, because it's a huge problem. Like, you put your information in for every account that you create, right? Like, you have to give them your name and your social and your bank account and your birthday, and like, you've got to reapply across all these platforms. If you just had a digital ID that had all that stuff tied to it, and you could just share whatever information was required by that other counterparty to be able to retrieve for 7 years through a hash that they could then reference on their side whenever they needed to, you don't have to put all that stuff in and go through the KYB and all that stuff every single time. You just unlock and you participate in ecosystems or wherever you're at with limited, their limited access. They don't get more information than they need, and they don't hold it for longer than they need because it's a smart contract. So I think somebody's going to figure that out here in 2026. At least I hope that they do. I think that the XRPL's digital identity and credentials does a lot of that, especially with the permission domains now, for these financial institutions to be able to participate in that capacity and know who's in that ecosystem or who has access to that data. But I think eventually you'll have private markets, you'll have other stuff on the XRPL because of those amendments specifically. somebody just needs to create the product and get it to market, and it's probably going to be Ripple. One of the acquisitions that I think would be interesting for Ripple, and this is something that Brad Garlinghouse mentioned in 2023 at CoinAlts. He was on stage, and this wasn't filmed except for what Ray filmed. Ray Fuentes, who got his hand slapped for doing it, filmed Jack McDonald and Brad Garlinghouse keynote. He talked about Chainalysis and how cool that company was for identity and being able to track, what wallet was associated with what person, and maintain all those records. If Ripple were to acquire that company, Chainalysis is large at this point, but that would be another really good institutional play for them, especially be able to provide that service to all of their clients, and create those digital identities and that information on chain for all those people to participate in certain ecosystems. So not saying that one's going to happen, but I think that would be a good strategic play for Ripple if they are in acquisition mode still. I don't know that they are. I mean, they've made a lot of acquisitions last year. I would expect that they would probably take 3 to 9 months to integrate those businesses and make sure they're streamlining processes and everything's working correctly before they continue on the warpath. But if they got the capital and the opportunity, somebody else, and I don't know if it was my team or what, somebody put out, Ripple looking at an acquisition of Circle. I shared this with the mastermind, but I'll talk about it here. Now that we have the Stablecoin Act and there are other people that are issuing stable coins, I think the reason that may have not occurred in the past would have been like kind of it's a monopoly, antitrust. If they had acquired Circle at that time, they would have really been the only stablecoin provider here domestically. But now that we have the Genius Act and other people issuing stablecoins, I don't think that's as big a concern. So maybe there will be something where, but Circle's gone public at this point, so it would be like a SPAC or a reverse merger, and that maybe that's how Ripple goes public. Or they could obviously take Circle private again, like Ripple, like Elon did with Twitter. That's a longer process. And I think, they would probably want access to liquidity. I know that the employees there, like Bob Way, he would like to be able to retire and access his Ripple stock. It's like the 10th employee at Ripple. Shout out to Bob. Hope you're doing well. I hadn't talked to Bob Way in a while. Tell people about that patent you got for that subnet, my man. Anyway, the banks, they don't want people to participate in certain ways. I think we'll get there. But again, I think they're going to have to strip that out. The DeFi component, I think they're going to have to strip out of the Clarity Act and kick the can on. And I think that we're going to get clarity on, what digital assets are, commodities, or, securities, and there'll be specifications around that. And then the DeFi piece will come later. Mr. Johnson says, Jake the Hulk. What's up, dude? Several weeks ago, you said we may have to share the new money system, with someone else, HBAR, XLM, Bitcoin. What did you mean? How does that affect price appreciation? I think everything settles back to the XRPL. I don't think that there will be any. When I'm talking about sharing, so there'll be other blockchains that work in specific applications and probably do a better job than XRP for certain things, but they're still going to settle back to XRP, right? So this became apparent today with Hype. Hype has a fantastic perps market. There's deep liquidity there. They have their own DEX, but now they're going to be using XRP as collateral to be able to issue ROUSD or do other stuff with Ripple Prime. So if XRP or ROUSD are the collateral that's used on that platform, they're issued assets on the XRPL or XRP itself. Again, at the end of the day, all of those transactions, once everything's settled up on that, settles back to the XRPL. So that's what I'm talking about through partnerships. Like, there needs to be interoperability. There needs to be connections to these other ecosystems. You've got Wormhole, you've got Axelar, you've got the side chains. there's a lot of things that have been built out over the past 2 years that just didn't exist before. And I think that's what some of the apprehension and slowdown, and really probably the Ripple case with the SEC was about, outside of, potentially Epstein being part of what was behind that also. We'll have to see. I think other ecosystems needed time to catch up. JP Morgan in particular, they had built out Onyx and they had JPM coin and they were trying to vie for that position. Nobody wanted to use that because it's a centralized stable coin that somebody else issues and they're the counterparty. And I think they finally came to that realization after Ripple wouldn't sell them the escrow, and then they were disgruntled about it and tried to compete against them and figured out they couldn't. And so then they had to bridge that back to the XRPL, and we got Axelar and we got the EVM sidechain. And that's Onyx's bridge back to the XRPL to settle back to the ledger. So, when I'm talking about other people participating in the ecosystem, it is, all of these other blockchains that need interoperability with XRP. Jacob Wilson says, did you see there are XRP loans on Coinbase? I wouldn't doubt it. There's loans on a lot of platforms. We have over $40 million in loans right now on XRP for our clients at Digital Wealth Partners. Some of them have been margin called, with the price action that is. Most people were able to meet those margin calls in a reasonable time frame. The other thing about working with us that's good is the counterparties that we have are very understanding on that. They're going to work with you. They're not trying to liquidate you like a smart contract or one of these exchanges. Like, they're going to get their money. They're just going to take your stuff. If you are margin called or capital called and you don't meet that obligation in a short period of time, they just liquidate you. You get a bit more leniency when you work with us. It's not, a ton, but anything's better than immediate liquidation. So if you're looking for those loans, if you're interested in that, I don't advocate for them. I'm not telling you to do it, but we do have that optionality for both the mastermind and for Digital Wealth Partners clients. Crypto One Ron says, I know BlackRock had XRP Trust a few years back. They will have to wait the 21 days like the other ETF groups. Do you think Fidelity follows? They won't have to wait 21 days. They standardized how these spot ETFs can come to market and pass legislation similar to a gold ETF. So as long as it meets those specifications, it immediately gets passed through. So same thing with Fidelity or Vanguard or whoever else wants to launch a or an XRP ETF. As long as it's a spot ETF, they can run it up and get it through immediately, as long as it meets those qualifications. We got Astronomy Real Channel. They say, Jake, if the reverse carry trade fully unwinds or never fully unwinds, do you see XRP remaining structurally correlated to Bitcoin, or is there a credible path to true decoupling? What specific measurable signals would tell you the shift is real? Here's like, I get up here every week and I tell you exactly what's going to happen, and then people are like, well, what if it doesn't happen? I'm not trying to be a dick, but like, I wouldn't come up here for 2 years and say the same thing over and over again if I wasn't absolutely sure. Sorry, on my soapbox. I'll answer your question. The signals. I'll talk to the signals point. The chart that I watch most often is the XRP versus Bitcoin chart. When you see a decoupling from Bitcoin and XRP rises in value, that will be very obvious on that chart. That would be what I would continue to monitor to be able to verify that has happened. That's the simplest way to do it. I mean, you could look at all of these other macroeconomic trends like I watch on a daily basis, but the simplest way to verify that decoupling is happening is going to be watching, one asset priced in the other. And again, like, I've been saying the same thing for 2 years, and I've had multiple people validate that this is how it's going to play out. And they aren't just people that like walk on the street, some dude on the internet or anything. They're like people that would know. So again, like I understand if somebody's new, that why you would question it. And again, you haven't had the same conversations. You don't have the same context as me. That's fair, right? But for me, it's a guarantee, and we don't guarantee things. So I probably shouldn't say that. It's a foregone conclusion in my mind that all of this does play out in the exact way that I've talked about for years. They've also asked, do you see permission dexes is now in the 14-day waiting period? What is left to get approved that we need? Again, none of this is needed. Corda can use XRP to settle already with XRP on the XRPL through the Corda settler. And they already have all of this stuff built into their ecosystems, the private permissioned ecosystems that they have, and they have had for 7-8 years. The lady that was on the stage from Citibank came from R3 at Onondo, at the Onondo Summit. She's worked at Citi for 5 or 6 years, and she came from R3 before that to help Citi build out their infrastructure. So anyway, like, we don't need any of these. Is it going to absolutely help people, utilize Ripple's products and other people leverage the XRPL for products and solutions that they bring to market? For sure, 100%. Will it continue to compound? Absolutely. Is it necessary to get price appreciation and adoption? No. So the analogy that I would give you is these amendments pour gas on the fire. The fire can be lit and it can be burning hot before these amendments get all the way finalized. As they get passed, though, that fire will get much bigger. So hopefully that provides clarity around, what those amendments are and how they help. But they are not necessary for the adoption of the asset to be able to settle markets. John Burnett, we already went over this one, so maybe I got through all the super chats. We did. Wow. Well, maybe we'll wrap it up a little early tonight then. I'm going to scroll on down. If you want to throw a super chat in here, we'll grab it. We'll take a couple from TikTok, and we'll wrap it a little early. We'll let you guys go to sleep and get some rest tonight. Maybe 5 or 10 minutes early. If you like this content, I always forget to say this. Please like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. We do these every Monday and Wednesday night. Please share this with somebody else that you think would find value from it. It does help the algorithm. And if you like this type of content and you want to learn more about some of the things that we're talking about here, we go over a lot of this in depth and in much greater detail in the mastermind over there at beyondbroke.com. You can use the code at the top of the screen here, beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO. It gets you $10 off on first month of Carbon One. Carbon One is the lowest level of membership that we have there at the mastermind at this time. We did away with any new social members. We have over 18,000 people there in the mastermind. They're all just like you, awesome people, have faith. They want better for themselves and their family. They want to increase their financial education. They want to get access to business resources. They want proprietary deal flow, and they want community of people that have, aligned incentives and will be there for them post price appreciation, to be able to go do fun, cool stuff with. We throw more in real life events than any other community. We have our next one in March in Nashville for St. Patty's Day. We have Canary Capital and Mangrove partnering with us on that event, which is pretty exciting. So you guys will get to say Steve. He was just on Crypto Sensei's podcast. He talked about the BlackRock ETF on there, which was cool to see. But they've launched XRP. They were the first to market with XRP ETF, HBAR, Solana, and a few other ETFs as well. So shout out to Steve at Canary Capital for helping us co-host that event there in Nashville. And we'll do, some of these other events. Again, one of the office spaces I looked at today comes with access to a bunch of other cool locations. We want to do international events for the family office clients as well as the mastermind over the long term. And so, that's playing a role in where we might end up for the office in New York. Michael says, I heard a rumor that Ripple's escrow will be going to the U.S. Treasury. Any thoughts? They could. There's a provision under U.S. law that allows them to basically get a huge tax deduction for gifting that to the U.S. government in some capacity. The U.S. wants to maintain control. I can tell you that. They destabilized or disintermediated themselves because they knew if they didn't, China or Russia or one of these other currencies would. And so they had to make it where it was a level playing field, where everybody could participate on their own merit, where they can't freeze, other people's assets. XRP is, black holed the original account, so they can't freeze anybody else's XRP. They can't claw it back, can't manipulate it. And that's what allows other people to trust the network and the token to be able to participate on their own merit. Issued assets, completely different story. You have clawback provisions and whatever else you want on that. But XRP itself cannot be redeemed or taken like that. So I think that I think this is, again, the top 20 crypto companies, how many are still here in the US? One. You know who that is? It's Ripple. Everybody else is offshore. So anyway, I think this goes much deeper than people realize. Skywalker says, Mastermind member, worth every penny. Thank you, my man. Glad to have you in the group. He says, can you give a 30,000-foot view of DWP and DAG and which we should contact for what questions? Thank you. It's a great question. So we're going to go through a full rebrand here, and everything is going to be under the umbrella of Digital Ascension Group. So kind of like when you contact Schwab, Schwab has multiple divisions. They've got an insurance division, they got wealth management, they got estate planning, they have taxes, they got a bunch of stuff at Schwab. All of those end-to-end private client services. So we're going to go through a rebrand because it is confusing. People are like, well, do I go to DWP or do I go to Azure Legacy or do I go to Digital Family Office? All of it's just going to be Digital Ascension Group. Okay. And we're going to go through that over the next 3-4 months here. But as it sits today, we do have multiple websites. So I'm going to walk you through, where to go depending on what you want. If you want wealth management, you want financial advice, you want loans, you want access to yield or, sorry, not yield, but return products for your XRP. You want institutional custody with Anchorage. You want access to lines of credit, other stuff. That's all going to be Digital Wealth Partners. Financial planning. We have financial planning over there. Tom Teal's our head financial planner, CFP. We have a couple other CFPs over there also now. So all of that, digitalwealthpartners.com. Use the contact us form. If you have, I think it's if you have over 50,000 XRP, you get a free consult. And they will give you financial advice, whether you work with them or not. They're just going to help you out. If it's anything to do with insurance, so you want to do an IUL, you want to do an ILET, you want to do whole life policy, term policy, you're looking at PPLI, you're looking at annuities, anything on that side of the fence is going to be Azure Legacy, XURE legacy.com. Carl's our CEO over there, Carl von Schwartz. You can also find him in the mastermind. All of these people you can also reach out to in the mastermind. And people in the mastermind will tell you where to go. The moderators in there have been with us for 3 years. They know everything end to end, all the stuff that we do. And then if you need taxes, you need estate planning, or any other legal services, that's going to be digitalfamilyoffice.com, or sorry, digitalfamilyoffice.io. You can also go to digitalascensiongroup.com and it will redirect you to that website. And depending on what service you're looking for, you go to services and just type it in and you can look at all the services that we provide there. So if you're looking for a consult to just ask questions, we have advisors over there for that. that'll help you through the estate planning. If you need, a corporate veil, you need LLC, you need a revocable trust, you need an international trust, you need a dynasty trust, or an asset protection trust. You need entity maintenance. You need tax services. We are not tax preparers, but we have a direct relationship with somebody that can help you file your taxes for your LLC on your W-2, whatever you have. If it's crypto, we can help you with that. Trying to think if there's any other services there. Well, I'll pull it up. We'll just look at it. So digitalfamilyoffice.io. If you go to the services page, we also have bill pay and concierge service for people that need that and want the full family office. If you are over $20 million in total net worth and you want a full end-to-end solution, we've got that. Yeah, I think I went through all of it here. But again, you go to that services page, and if you want the wealth management or the custody, all you got to do is click on that, and it'll redirect you over there to the Digital Wealth Partners page. So hopefully that gives you kind of a high level. So like same thing a Schwab or a Fidelity or a Vanguard would provide you on the private client services side, or even like a Chase private client. There's wealth management, there's estate planning, there's tax planning, there's legal, there's bill pay, there's accounting. All of those things end to end is what we do for people that have large amounts in crypto. And there's all like, I have a whole spider web thing of all the different stuff that we plan to do over the long term that falls in each one of those sections. We actually had it like a company. We had almost 100 people on our company-wide call the other day, which was wild. And we went through like the full vision of everything, because it is like, there's a lot to it. And unless you work in this industry or you've worked with other wealthy individuals and you've had these types of services before, you really, like, some of it you don't even know exists. So anyway, we'll also have in the near future IT services for people. So we'll manage a domain name for you. If you want an easy website, we can spin that up. And you'll have one direct email that gets you access to everything. We're also launching something in the near future where you'll have a bank account, because right now Anchorage doesn't have ACH services or debit card services, but the partner that we're working with for that does. So it'll be all right there in one app that you can use on your phone, which will be fantastic. And that'll be under, again, Digital Ascension Group. We got Michelle. She says, I heard, oh, that's Rumors Escrow. We already did that one. I'm going to go down to the bottom, and then I'm going to take 2 from TikTok, and then we're going to wrap it up tonight. Thank you to this person for the super chat. I didn't see a question. This person just became a member. Awesome. Glad to have you as a member on the YouTube channel. You will get some exclusive content a little bit earlier than other people. CJK 8688 says, what's up, Jake? What's up, my man? Mastermind here. If the Democrats win the midterms, does that change anything for the future of crypto, XRP in particular? Thanks, big dog. I think if the Democrats get in and win midterms and control of the House or the Senate changes, it's very unlikely that we will even get any legislation passed after that. I think that XRP will be the only thing that has clarity and is able to be used, which I don't think that's what Ripple wants, but that's the position that they're in at this point. This gentleman says, the supplanter. Yeah, so if you go look up Jacob, if you look up the meaning of my name, it means to supplant or hold the heel. And I take that literally. I try to support other people. I try to lift other people up. That's what I feel like I was put here to do. So thank you for pointing that out. He says, thanks for all your insights. All this playing out would imply that the President of the United States is in on it. Thoughts and why? I'm going to plead the fifth on that one. Rockin' HL says, do you have a specific charity you want to start or fund after price appreciation? I want to open a sports center for youth in a small town. That's really cool, man. So a lot of people have a lot of interest when it comes to the philanthropic stuff that they want to do, whether that's for their community or something, you know, that's happened to them in their life that they want to help other people with. My wife's passion is horses. And so I'm pretty confident that we will likely do something on that front, philanthropically, you know, do scholarships for rodeo riders. Um, she does equestrian drill team. And so anyway, there'll be something there that we probably put our money and hearts toward. And I'll let her kind of lead that one. Um, I've seen other men do that with their wife, and it's been pretty successful. Now, you know, as I gray and get older, there's a philosophy that I kind of live my life by, or I'm trying to anyway. And Patrick Bet-David is who put this forth. So, like, first 20 years, just don't mess up. The next 20 years, you become financially free, build something, you know, become the best in your industry at something. So by 40, you have all the money that you're ever going to need. Okay, like your family's set up by 40. After 40, between 40 and 60, you get to reinvent yourself. So you get to focus on whatever you want, whatever you forewent for those other 20 years. You didn't do the art or the music or the sports or whatever it was. You're still young enough at 40 that you can do those things. And then the last portion of your life, anything after 60, is where you just give back. You become a mentor, you become a politician, you become a professor, you help other people achieve things, give back, you know, use the wisdom and discernment that you've been able to accrue over your lifetime to help other people achieve their goals, right? Like, allow other people to stand on your shoulders to achieve more. So I think at that point in my life, you know, philanthropy will probably become a bigger piece. I definitely want my child to be involved with philanthropic giving. We'd like to have, I can't think of the name of the book right now, but there was a book I read where the patriarch that made all the money set up a foundation early on, and they've got a very large family. And as the children become somewhere between 9 and 12 years old, they have the ability to step up, and they get to choose out of 25 or 30 submissions, 2 submissions on who gets the allocation for that charity that year. And they have to present that in front of the family. So I think that would cultivate a lot of, one, showing your children that you should be giving back, you should be helping other people. But also, you know, their ability to present something to the family and have discourse over why they made those decisions. You're just cultivating that ability early on so that they feel involved, and they instill those skills, traits, and beliefs so that they're able to foster, you know, all of those things for the family moving forward. So that's something that I would like to do. You know, if within the next 3 years, start a charity and have my son involved in some way in that, so that he just builds that muscle, you know, because that's what it is. It's a giving muscle. Most people live in scarcity and they want to hoard things. I've found that the more that you give back to other people, the more value that you create, the more that you go out and do things out of your way to help others, it all comes back to you tenfold. Much more than, and it's never through the way that you thought it would be. And so at this point, I do it knowing that it'll come back, but I don't have any expectation on who or how. And I think that's the best way to do it. Like, you just know that God and the universe is going to take care of you, and you just do your best to take care of other people and have full faith that He's going to bring it back to you. You're going to circulate the money, right? You're not spending money, you're circulating the money. So excited for you in the sports center. I think that that'll be great for the youth there in your town. And again, love all of the objectives. We have a ton of people that have so many cool things that they want to do post price appreciation for their community. This person says, you missed my super chat earlier. Can you please look for it? It was 12 minutes after the stream started. All right, I will run back up here. 12 minutes after the stream started. Oh, this one is 7up. I missed this one too. They said there is a TA expert in the mastermind who says he's always been correct on price, and 70-cent XRP is where we are headed. How long could we stay there before price appreciation? I mean, if that person's right, I think it'll just be like tap and go. I don't think it'll be there that long. This person says, hey, Jake, what if Iran were to strike oil rigs? Would that make oil skyrocket? I don't know why they would do that. They are the ones profiting off the oil rigs, so I doubt that's going to happen. A Zigging Giant says, looking like Iran, Iran, and the U.S. conflict is heating up. However, in a very low chance of deal being made by Friday without any more escalation, is there another way that oil can spike or the reverse carry trade again? They're going to shut down the strait. I'm pretty confident that that's how it's going to be. Or we get something crazy like a solar flare. RSD 500 says, hi, Jake. How long will it take between the reverse carry trade crash and XRP going to 3 digits? Blink twice if you have info that it's going to take a few days or weeks. I'm not blinking twice. I don't think it'll take very long at all. Withstand 143 says, Jake, you gave a thumbs up to the LLC for my 11-year-old son. Laughlin said they normally don't do a manager-managed LLC. Oh, I didn't know your child was 11. Yeah, that's hard. If I said that, I assumed your son was older, and I apologize for making that assumption. And maybe you even said that in the question and I messed up. But I don't think you can do that. It would be difficult to set it up that way. You would, yeah, you could set it up. You could do it this way. I think you could do it this way. You would be the manager, but he could be the owner. So you would gift him the XRP, and then pay for the LLC to be set up, and that's your contribution. And maybe you hold a small point of equity in the LLC, and his contribution is the XRP. You probably need to talk to them about a family limited partnership. It's going to be more expensive, like $7,000 to set up a family limited partnership with multiple entities. But I think that's probably the best way to do that if you want to do it. I wouldn't. I mean, I don't see and I don't know your full situation, so maybe there's something more to it. You're trying to keep those assets away from a spouse or something in a divorce. A trust would be better suited for that than the LLC and putting it in your son's name. I would talk to Laughlin and explain your situation and what you're trying to accomplish, and I think they could probably come up with a better solution than setting up an LLC for your son and making him the manager. I would just have that conversation with Laughlin because they're going to be able to give you a better answer than myself. We got Just Trust. Jesus, bro. Brother Jake. What's going on? I love the name, by the way. When the reverse carry trade unwinds and all the dominoes fall into place, stock and crypto market will crash. Will XRP crash with it to low prices just for us to buy more? How low do you believe XRP? I don't think you're going to be able to buy. I've already said that plenty of times. I think that Tether is going to collapse with that. I don't think exchanges are going to allow you to participate in that moment in time. Nick Shirk says, my man Jake, hope all is well with you and your family. I'm here every Monday and Wednesday. I've learned so much, a lot from you. I've learned a lot from you. Greatly appreciate your wisdom. God bless. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that, man. God bless you and your family. Wish you guys health, peace, and prosperity here in 2026. We get AmServe. They say permission DEX passed. What does that mean for the XRPL? We've been over that lots of times already tonight. AM, I missed a lot of these, so I appreciate this person telling me to go back up in the chat. AM09B says, how can XRP maximize its efficiency as a fast settlement asset if to reach very high price, it would need to accumulate and taken out of circulation. For it to really be able to process the volume of transactions that MasterCard and many of these others require, they're going to have an implicit or explicit subnet added. And again, Bobway has the patent on that. Austin says, if XRP price hits $1,000 to $10,000 per coin, how in this scenario would I cash out any amount and transfer to my bank account with setting off red flags and my bank freezing the funds? You'd set up an LLC, my bud. If you have a business bank account that's seasoned in, you're not going to have those issues. You would have already talked to a private banker. You've already established that relationship. You tell them that you're going to have a liquidity event. You're going to be moving this amount of money into the account. If you work with Digital Wealth Partners, it's going to be coming from another bank and institution when you wire that money over. No issues. If you're doing it off of an exchange and you're moving it to your personal bank account, you are absolutely right. They're going to flag that and freeze that puppy and ask you 1,000 questions, and they can hold your money as long as they want. So again, like, these are all the reasons that we do a lot of the stuff that we do. And I'm not saying this stuff to fearmonger. I've seen it happen. I had it happen. That's how I know. That's why I set all this stuff up. So, would highly recommend setting up an LLC or a trust and then getting assets over to Anchorage so that that wire is coming from a separate bank where that account's KYC, KYB'd. They know it's legit. You're not going to have any issues. We got Santiago. It says, El Jake, mi amigo. Domino question. Is it necessary for BlackRock to launch an ETF when Ripple could just re-escrow their release and essentially drive the supply to drive the price higher? That way, thanks for all that you do. They've already done that. Like, they didn't release this escrow onto the market, and we haven't seen the price go. So I'm going to say the XRP Bitcoin or the BlackRock ETF is still necessary. Time Traveler has arrived. Great to see you here. Appreciate you. I would love to get your insights on where you got, what happens in the future. If you do want to set up the LLC, here's the code for that. I haven't said that anytime tonight, but I'm sure people, want it. It is 50 off 50 OFF DAG LLC. That's 50 OFF DAG LLC. Get you everything end to end to be able to manage your digital assets out of a holding company, set up in Wyoming, get you creditor protection and the anonymity. DFW Mike, my man, says, good evening, boss man. Evening to the tea lady. Do you think, do you like Corvette rebuilds? Zoom in 11 days. Awesome, dude. Corvettes are cool. I like Stingray. Like, that was my dad's favorite Corvette, and he had a couple others. He had one Corvette when he was younger, which he crashed. But we had wasn't a Challenger. Why can't I think of the other? It's a Z71. It's a Chevrolet Camaro. God. But yeah, I think that those are cool. My uncles have all rebuilt cars my whole life. So been around it. It's not something I'm super into, but it sounds fun. Go race it on the track, my man. Let me know how it goes. Send me pictures. Love You for Life says, hi, Jake. Have you seen the video that 24-Hour Crypto plays after all his YouTube content? You make a cameo appearance. It is definitely worth a look. I'm hearing Saylor can't get liquidated. Thoughts? We went over the Saylor deal a little bit earlier, but I will have to go check out the 24-Hour Crypto deal if he's got me on there. William, how are you, sir? He says, Jake, Vance says there will be a price floor on silver soon with the government, the buyer of last resort, to stop the fake pricing by the bankers. You have comments. Sounds like a $50 silver. It's going to be the floor, in my opinion. Jake, is there another timeline you're giving us? I am not giving any timelines. I got my hand slapped by my attorneys. I cannot do that. All right. Back to the super chat that we scrolled all the way back up for, and we will end on this one. We got Nitro again. They say, good evening, boss. Mastermind Carbon One LLC bank account done. can you tell us the best way to sell out a small bag once price hits our sell price? Small bag is not part of the LLC, waiting to use it to become debt free. Why wouldn't you put it in the LLC? You should absolutely. Selling it in your personal name is not going to give you any benefit whatsoever. Selling it in the LLC is one, you're going to have an anonymous transaction on a public record. Two, it's going to give you creditor protection. So if somebody tries to sue you, if it's in your personal name, they can take that. If you're not going to be able to mitigate any taxes in your personal name, you're going to get a standard deduction on that. You could borrow against it out of your LLC and do it that way. And you don't have to sell anything, and you can ride the appreciation. You could put it to work in some of the products that we're going to have at Digital Wealth Partners to be able to generate income for yourself. So if it's a small bag, like I don't know why you wouldn't put it in the LLC and just do it out of there. You're not going to get any benefit from holding it in your personal name and doing it that way. You can set a limit order with Digital Wealth Partners, and they'll execute that and then wire it over to your bank account. Or, depending on what size transaction it is, you might partner with an OTC desk. Uphold, Kraken, Coinbase, there's lots of them. We have direct, partners, well, not partnerships. Uphold's a partnership for the OTC desk and the institutional side. So if you want access to Austin and the team over there, you can talk to us. We also have contacts at Kraken and some of the other ones, really all of them. But yeah, I would make sure that it's inside the LLC, because again, like the previous gentleman, if you wire a larger amount of money over to your personal bank account from an exchange, they're going to flag it. They're not just going to let it go through. They're going to think that it's crypto and crazy and sketchy, even post clarity. I think there's going to be a period of time, maybe another 12 months, where they crack down on that. So you want it to come from another institution that they're going to recognize, and it's not going to be a problem. And ideally, you would want it to flow to a business bank account where you could then, pay it out as a distribution to yourself, or, borrow that money out of the company. And then you're first lien holder on the company also, if somebody else sues it, to be able to, actually the lien holder would be the company against you. But there's lots of ways to do it, very low taxes if you do it that way. So I would talk to a tax attorney. I would talk to a financial advisor when you're making that decision in those calls. Again, I'm just one guy on the internet, crazy guy over here that knows enough to be dangerous on stuff. They're going to be able to give you the best tactics and ways to do that. But that's the conversation and some of the questions I would ask. All right, and that's a wrap. That's where we're going to end it tonight. Again, if you want to learn more, if you like this type of conversation and you have cool questions like this, we have a community of about 18,000 people in the Beyond Broke Mastermind. You just go to beyondbroke.com and use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $90, a $10 discount. Love to have you there in that community. And then if you need the LLC, again, the code for that is 50 off 50 OFFDAG LLC. They get you everything end to end for $2,000 on the LLC. If you need a living trust with that, it filed in your state. It's a basic one. It's not, bells and whistles and a bunch of crazy stuff, but you get the living trust set up in your state to give you probate protection along with the creditor protection that you get from the LLC, and the assignment. If you want, a couple $100 off of the assignment, you can use the code Webinar Trust, all capitalized, at checkout, and it gets you the trust and the assignment for $800, which is way cheaper than anybody else is going to charge you for a living trust. If you go to an attorney in your state, it's going to be somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000 most of the time. And then last but not least, if you do have at least 50,000 XRP and you want to work with Digital Wealth Partners, get your assets into institutional custody, all you got to do is go to digitalwealthpartners.net and go to the Contact Us form, and they will be able to provide you financial advice, give you a consult, and get you onboarded over there if that's something you're interested in. So with that, again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Wednesday to come hang out with me and ask great questions. We'll be back again next week. Until then, God bless, and we'll see you on the next one.